Hi. I am your friendly neighborhood bureaucrat coming to speak to you on this Saturday, hot Saturday afternoon. What I am important that I say is while I am a bureaucrat, while I do work for Hackney Council, I am not the mayor, I'm not the chief exec, I'm not a head of service, so I probably can't help you. What I can do is if you have any complaints or issues, I'm not speaking on behalf of the council today, it's very much how I got here instead of what I do. So if you do have any questions or concerns or anything you'd like to say to the council, let me know and I can probably facilitate the right people that you want to talk to. Meanwhile, what I do is a lot of this. I am a professional dot connector for the council. I'm the council's economist. I'm in charge of all of the economic data, processing and producing it. What I'm so excited to get to say to you guys today is what I've been watching over the past few years are these blue lines that you can see. You see those lines that go up, 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 up? That's you. That's all of you. 20-somethings to 40-somethings have moved into the council in the past 5 to 7 years, and you've completely changed all of our statistics. So I've been watching that for the past few years, and what I basically do is kind of figure out what that means for our economy. What that means for our economy as part of East London, and what that means for our economy as part of London and the Southeast. So it's really exciting to get to actually stand in front of you instead of talking about you all the time. But what you should ask me is, and what my younger self asks me all the time is, what's a nice revolutionary like you doing in a joint like this? Why are you in government? And the answer is, I absolutely am fascinated by power. Who has it? Who doesn't? Why don't they? And where I started, actually, was in the abortion rights movement in America when I was 17, an initiative campaign that took us knocking on doors, making phone calls, and talking to people. And at the time, the abortion rights movement was countering a lot of violence. A lot of doctors were killed and clinics were bombed. And I went through this campaign and realized that actually power is really interesting. So I used that to choose my university, and I found the typical leftist university stocked with hardcore progressives that had been civil rights activists in the past and had worked in popular movements in Latin America. And what they taught us were a few key principles about economic development and government. One, complexity. There are no root causes. There's lots and lots of forces acting at any time. Government can screw up and it can do great stuff, and it's up to us to actually monitor and track it to figure out where things are going. Two, multiplicity. There are tons of voices out there, tons of truths and tons of perspectives. All of them matter, and we should work to make sure that they're integrated into our policy. Three, civil society is a given. Our generation was born in a post-party politics. We understood civil society as a big part of the story rather than kind of people working on the fringe. It's very much a different story than what they had in the past in the way that government is understood. Next, economic justice is basic. The ability of people to provide for themselves, to feed themselves, is probably the most important part of their lives. Self-empowerment can be met through self-employment, and this was a really big piece of our education. And last, the environment is imperative. You can't go without it. The economy and the environment actually come from the same word, oikos. It's a root, the root word is Greek for home. So stocked with this fabulous progressive education, I set out to figure out what I ought to do next, and I couldn't actually go to grad school unless I talked to the people that I'd been learning about. At the same time, the US was closing a chapter of massive, massive hegemony in Latin America. We had spent more there than any place else. We had basically militarized the region on behalf of anti-communist philosophy and made sure that corporations could own utilities, land, whatever it was they wanted, under free trade agreements. And I had to go see what this was all about since we paid for it. So I headed down to Latin America. El Salvador was my first stop. And what I wanted to see, at the same time as we were learning how awful things were, we were also seeing a lot of alternative economic development models coming forth. I wanted to see what the components were, what that meant, how that actually was in contrast to what we'd seen for the past 500 years of colonialism. My first stop was El Salvador. What I did here, El Salvador received the majority of US aid and intervention throughout the 70s and 80s. We paid for a civil war there that killed 75,000 people. It lasted between 1980 and 1992. I showed up in 1999 after the peace accords had been signed, and I worked with an organization that was basically created by the family of one of the comandantes of the guerrillas that was fighting in the war. And what they had started with was health, but they realized there were other things to be done, things like youth empowerment programs, women empowerment programs, organic agriculture. They trained in a variety of different community development stuff. What I was there to see was this notion of microfinance, microcredit. What did it look like when the poor got $500 to be able to do something? Oftentimes they bought a cow, but it totally released their ability to become economic agents and provide for themselves. So what you see here is a series of meetings, and the best part is this woman is signing her finance application with her thumb. She can't read, she can't write, but she just had a finance class. Up there is strategic marketing and business planning, and down here was I think it was a story on how they were going to sell, what they were going to sell, and where to, so strategy in terms of location. What I learned from this place is that business development is truly fundamental. Being able to be self-employed is truly transformational self-actualization, but it's not the end-all be-all. It's not awesome in every sense of the word, and it's really hard work. However, I was able to see it on the front lines, and that was the most important bit. I came back to the US, worked in a couple of social justice organizations, and then came here. All of the revolutionaries were going to the Zapatistas, Chiapas, the mountains of Mexico, the most isolated place in the Americas. If you weren't going there, you weren't progressive enough, so I had to go see it. By the time I showed up in 2001, the 1994 revolution that they had that took over 4 local towns, it was a series of Mayan organizations that had said, that's it, we've been exploited for long enough, you don't give us any public services, you give us no investment, and you pay us crap for wages. They had said, that's enough, we're not going to do it anymore, and they took over 4 towns. Now, they had 2 experiments running. One was in government, and it still continues. It's 18 years old now. And it's the idea that autonomous regions can govern themselves autonomously and take care of their own resources and not necessarily need influence and direction from the global economy. The other thing that they did, which is why I went, was the Universidad de la Tierra, the University of Earth, which is a fantastic name. Basically, it trains anywhere from 100 indigenous youth from the area at any time in basic things like electrical engineering, computers, accounting, typing, sewing. And what I saw it as, what you see here is the organic farming compound that they had. There's some of the first computers in Chiapas right there, and that's the electrical engineering. Now, these women up here were also part of a women's cooperative. One of the things about the EZLN's revolution is that they made sure that there was room for women to be able to have a voice. That was actually really important for me to understand, because what they were doing is making shirts and selling them to all the tourists like me. And they made quite a bit off of it. But what this was showing is that the history that the campesinos had in the area of farming as their only option, farming for really crap prices, wasn't necessarily where they were going to go. And the university is completely self-reliant. It's a self-contained system. So everything they produce is used by the people. The people built the school as well. And so it's a really perfect example of an alternative economic model. Again, back to the US, worked up there for a while, and then we went to Cuba. This was the coolest thing. So I managed to get one of the last visas. I went with a feminist foreign policy group that took us to Cuba on behalf of the Federation of Cuban Women. And it was one of the last visas that was allowed to be able to go into Cuba because the Bush administration shut down all the rest. I went to a conference that told us about the status of women in Cuba, how they were doing. They showed us different projects, different pregnancy projects plus employment projects. It was really interesting, healthcare projects, etc. But really what I wanted to go see was the response to what folk may not know. Everybody knows about the US blockade, everybody knows how things went down in terms of the revolution, but in 1990 there was what they call the special period, and the lights went out in Cuba. Complete and total loss of all of their imports from the Soviet Union because it dissolved. So the island was left entirely on its own. And the response that the government had was what brought me down there more than anything. They basically said, self-sufficiency is massive, we're going to have to figure it out. Let's start with a series of urban farms in Havana. In 1994, they created the Urban Agriculture Department with the city of Havana and the country of Cuba, the national government, and they're now in 43 districts, urban farms. And they basically are exactly what you guys know of as regular old urban farms. This is a worm bathtub. My favorite part about going to Cuba, actually, because I'm from Seattle originally, and we have urban farms everywhere. It's just like the city in Hackney Farm. It's like your guys' allotments that we have here. But the sweet part about the Cubans is that they have what they call the ecology of poverty. Nothing